Here.
All right, good to go. Thanks for coming, guys. I know the turn 5, y'all got an exam Friday. If you feel like you need to go, we will record it. It is recording, so it's there for later. As was mentioned, we got a good cast. Pooja and Nick are a term above us. They were the president, vice president prior to our class, the January 2020 class. And we also have Akash and Savannah. Akash and I in New Jersey, so we could speak a little bit about that. Savannah's over in New York. So we're all on the same page. We're all halfway through our clinical rotations. And then if y'all have any other questions regards to a little bit further along with Pooja and Nick, they have more insight than we do. So we'll try to keep this kind of chronological. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves, Akash?
Yeah, hey, so my name's Akash. Like Brady said, I'm in New Jersey with him as well. Same hospital as him, going through our psych rotation. So excited to talk to you guys.
Hi, I'm Savannah. I'm in my 3rd year also. I'm at the Brooklyn Hospital Center. And I've done OB, peds, and IM, and I just started surgery last week. So yeah, excited to talk to you guys about being in New York.
Hey guys, I'm Pooja. I'm currently in my 4th year. I'm in New Jersey at, not inside right now, but I did most of my 4th year at Hackensack, and I've been at a couple of other hospitals in Jersey as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick. I did my 3rd year in California at O'Connor Hospital up in San Jose. And during my 4th year, kind of split between New York and New Jersey. So if you have any questions about moving around and how to find housing and stuff from month to month, go ahead and shoot me a message.
Yeah, so we could reiterate that. I know a lot of you have reached out about the New York, New Jersey thing. Savannah would be great to talk to about the New York side of things. Akash and I, and Pooja as well. Pooja grew up in New Jersey, so she knows even more than us, but Akash and I have been here 6 months. But in regards to that, I've had a lot of questions about should you choose New York or New Jersey. I actually put New York as my first choice and ended up in New Jersey. I found that this is actually a blessing in disguise. I'm like 30 minutes, Akash and I are like 30 minutes from the city, but we still can kind of get away at times. So I have a car, I can get around. I don't have to deal with this, all the busyness of the city, but I can still go when I want. So maybe Savannah, you could kind of talk a little bit about how do you even get, how far are you from the hospital? How do you use public transport and all that?
Yeah, so I'm from Texas originally, so this is like really new to me still, but I love New York. I've had so much fun living here. Yeah, so I do public transport. I live, luckily I got a place that's like a 5-minute walk max to Brooklyn Hospital Center. So that's been really, really nice and convenient. Where I'm living is expensive though, because it's in basically like downtown Brooklyn. Like it's pretty close. It's in this city called Fort Greene, Brooklyn. I didn't really know much about New York before coming here. I'd like been here once before that. But yeah, I mean, getting around Brooklyn, I think is like a really good area to be in New York. I originally put that I wanted New York, so I got it. Luckily, I did hear about people that put New York and they ended up getting Jersey. Like a couple of my friends had that happen to them too. So I thought that was kind of crazy, honestly, because New York has like so many hospitals. But yeah, getting around from Brooklyn is really nice because it's like a 20-minute, I don't know, subway from at least where I live, because I live like close to downtown, so it's close to the west side, I guess, of Brooklyn. It could take like 20 minutes to get to the city, like on the subway. So it's like really nice. There's buses everywhere. And then there's like just subway stations everywhere. I know a lot of people they live like further out, there's some people that live like 30 minutes like on the subway, or people that live like, I don't know, 10 minutes on a bike. Yeah, so I don't know, people get around though. Some people have their car, like Lindsay Wilburn, she has her car here and she's from Texas also. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fun taking the subway. I don't know, coming from somewhere where you have to drive. I do miss my car, like for the little things. It's more like the inconvenience things, like going to an appointment or like going to get groceries. That's annoying, having to like walk or like ride the subway with all your groceries and stuff. But other than that, yeah, I live in like an area, if you guys end up at Brooklyn Hospital Center, it's like a really big, it's basically like an SGU like hub hospital, I feel like, or like just basically an international medical like students and professional or physicians hospital, because pretty much everyone, most of the attendings and then most of the residents, I feel like are international med students or they're from SGU. So that's sorry, that's been really nice. Where I live, like if you live like really close to the Brooklyn Hospital Center, at least, it is pretty pricey. I'll be transparent with like how mine is. My dad is helping, and I obviously have like financial aid also, which we could all talk about that, I guess, in a little bit, because it's not enough to live like in New York, honestly, like at all. So I'm like really blessed to have like my dad help me. But so my apartment costs like basically around like 3,500, including electricity and like water and amenities fee and all of that type of stuff. So pretty pricey. But I know like people can find places like the apartment complex right next to me is pretty nice, and so a lot of students live in there also, and their prices are more around like 2,600. It's just not as big of like it's not as big of an apartment complex, so they don't have as many like amenities and stuff, but I think it's pretty like decent for like the price and the location. Yeah, sorry, just went on a like huge spiel. There's so much about New York, but someone else can go on and then we can.
Do you live with someone and you pay 3,500 by yourself?
I live in a studio. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So comparatively, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. So
I mean,
I'd say my place. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I would say my place is comparable to that. I have a studio as well in New Jersey, and I pay 2,100. So you could see the price difference there. I do agree that if you're just on loans, and y'all could all speak to this, it's tight. Like it's very tight. Like theoretically, if you were just on loans, you'd probably need to get a roommate or maybe 2 or maybe 7. I'm not sure, but like it's tight. And I don't know what SGU's policy. You would think with inflation that our loan money should be going up, but just so you know, going into it, it is a little bit much. Anyway, so Akash and I are over at St. Joseph's. It's about a 20-minute drive there. Again, I pay like 2,100. There's really no traffic in the morning. It's not bad at all. And then it's probably like a 30-minute drive to Manhattan too. So like, even though I'm in New Jersey, I mean, you could live in areas of New York and it takes 30 minutes to get to Manhattan. So it's really not that bad. Even if we take public transport, it takes less than an hour to get there. So the whole New York, New Jersey, a lot of it's just, saying it what it is. Some places in New Jersey are closer to the city than actual places in New York. So think about that, because the money's really tight. You'll feel a little bit better about it if you're paying less in New Jersey. Then again, though, like on top of the 2,100, I have a car note too. So you have to factor that in as well. Pooja, do you want to talk about kind of how you went through the third year? I mean, you stayed at the same place the whole year, right?
Yep. So I was at Hackensack for all of my third year. I live super close to the hospital. I have a roommate and we each paid about $1,200 in rent. So definitely significantly cheaper with a roommate. And then currently we're renting month to month. So that price went up a little bit, but it's still cheaper than Brady or Savannah. So that's definitely nice. And it's walking distance from the hospital. And I actually have a car, but my roommate does not. So depending on where you are in Jersey, it might be, but overall, most people here definitely have cars. It was nice being at one place for all your rotations so that you could find a place to live that was convenient. Yeah.
It's also like 5 degrees here right now. So if you plan on walking anywhere, you should just enjoy the weather while you're down there. So factor that in too, because it's definitely an adjustment. What else? Nick, you want to talk about maybe the lifestyle out in California?
Yeah, so I was in at O'Connor, like I was saying, in San Jose, which is the Bay Area, kind of Northern California. I think my rent was about 1,900, and I did all but psych at that hospital. So I was able to live in one apartment as a 1-bedroom by myself. And you have to have a car in California for sure, like public transport there. I know someone that used it. It's very inconvenient. But they also had roommates who were also with us. So they were able, kind of get rides and stuff that way. But in California, you definitely need a car.
Let's see. Okay. I guess that's all. So again, we're going to go through all the questions, but we're kind of just going to talk about this chronologically. So you guys are January. Sorry, I know a lot of you are here, but in regards to the term 5, y'all are a January class, so y'all will follow the same timeline as Akash, Savannah, and me. So theoretically, you'll need to take. I think it was like March 25th that we had to take step 1 by, which is should be plenty of time. My recommendation would, maybe take a little bit of time off, but the sooner you get going, the sooner you'll get it done. You don't know if things are going to happen. And I think a lot of people said, okay, I'm good. I'll be good by the 25th. And then just things happened. It was just studying didn't go well. You had family stuff. And then you get pushed back past that deadline. Now it's a soft deadline, but you still want to get it done by that point. So theoretically, if you start January 1st, they say about 8 weeks generally, you should be able to take it by the end of February or at least early March. I can say I took it early thinking maybe that would help my selection. I still got my second choice. So I don't know don't feel like you need to take the exam early to get your first choice. I don't think that matters. I've never heard that matters. It was just a thought, but in that regard, it didn't really matter. But again, take a week or two, but you're kind of already in the mood or in the kind of grind. So yeah, it's probably best to just kind of keep going at it, since you kind of walk through term 5 into studying. It's kind of the process. Akash, you want to talk about kind of what your process was with STEP?
Yeah, so it's really dependent on everybody else, right? So like Brady said, that it's good that if you just walk into it, you can just kind of get it done, the sooner the better, and then you just kind of have more time at the end to just kind of have a vacation until you start start your course. Me personally, we finished like first week of December or something like that for our exams. I took a whole month off because I just wanted to just have some time off, just enjoy some time with the family and all that. I didn't look at anything. I didn't look at any books. So it really just depends on how you want to approach it. Obviously, when I started studying again for STEP, I was a step behind because I've been out of it for a month. So again, it just depends on how you are, how comfortable you feel with it. I took it the first week of March. Like Brady said, he took it end of February. I took it early March. And again, I felt comfortable enough to take it at that time, but obviously don't feel pressure to take it early just because, your friends are doing it early. Take as much time as you need because obviously you want to get these tests done and pass comfortably, feeling comfortable enough to take these exams. But it's definitely doable in the time, I think. But as Brady mentioned, things happen, so don't delay it, and get it done as soon as you can. I don't know if we should talk about like study techniques and all that stuff right now, or is that something later in the questions as well?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah, what'd you think?
So yeah, and I'm sure like a lot of people in the audience probably did as well, was like a big Anki, like just literally just Anki was my life, and it still is, honestly, like from the first month of med school. Anki UWorld was what I preached all along through the first 2 years, and then when I started studying for STEP, when in term 5 and for STEP, I used the first aid book, which was tremendous, and honestly, like if you can get that book down, you'll be golden for the exam. So those are the 3 things that I really use, and really it's about repetition and being consistent with your studying. Weekly, on a weekly basis as well, you want to be consistent. I know some people took like a day off every week just to reset, and that's fine too. Again, it depends on how you want to structure it. I took like a soft kind of day on Sundays usually, like I did a little bit of studying, kind of just an hour or two of Anki, but took the rest of the day off. But I think the key thing is to just be consistent and see what's working. Whatever was working for you for the first 2 years, if you continue that through your step, you should be fine theoretically. And also one other thing I found, which happened to me, was like you don't get pressured into like feeling like you need to use like 10 other resources that everybody else is using, because I know a lot of people use like Sketchy or Osmosis or whatever it may be. I didn't use any of that when I tried to use Sketchy, because it still is very famous, and I'm sure a lot of people here use it. But I tried to get into it, I couldn't. So just stick with what was working, continue through with that. Hopefully, you'll see results as you're doing UWorld and practice exams, um, and if you're not, which is okay, and even if you're not, reach out to like some of us. We can try to get, guide you as well. There's counselors at the school as well to help with this stuff. That there's resources out there for you to like make the right decisions to study and get better at it so that you can take the exam and pass comfortably and not be stressed out. But I think it's definitely enough time to be okay and move on to clinicals.
Yes, so I was a heavy question at UWorld. That transition in term 5 when you do the BSCEs, that what you did for that, you should use that, maybe change it a little, but I imagine most of you started using UWorld and that was kind of your mainstay. So that's what I used. It was very apparent as I did questions where my deficiencies were, so I'd be able to go back through those. But UWorld, y'all probably full with it now. There's note section, the note cards, I would deal with, do all that and stuff like that, just for repetition. But I was heavy on UWorld, still am through clinicals. That's kind of my go-to. And I guess you guys can appreciate, and for all of us, it's difficult when you're used to getting very high percentages, and then all of a sudden you're on UWorld and you're like, you see the national averages in the 60s. It just is what it is. Like, just accept it. If you're hitting in the 60s, you're at the national average. Okay, so that's not actually bad. It's just these questions are difficult, and that's how they're formatted. But you guys are getting into that. So the point of term 5 is so that you can seamlessly go into step prep. So whatever you use for the BSCEs is kind of going to be the thought process going forward. Savannah, what did you do for step?
Yeah, I took a month off also, like after term 5, because we ended in like December, right? And we were on the island, or I was, I mean, you were too, but and then like Christmas is coming up and stuff. I just knew it was going to be really distracting, like a really distracting time. And knew I would want a break also. So I was like, I felt like I needed the break before starting to like, end your life and start studying for this exam. So yeah, I don't know. I would kind of recommend that. I didn't look at anything either. Like I thought about it, but I was like, I don't know. I was just like, not about it. I just needed the break. Just the anticipation of about like having to study for this exam that like I feared like the whole past 2 years of like medical school, So yeah, I'd recommend like at least taking like 2 weeks, like at least if you're too anxious to, not take like the full month off. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, studying for STEP was rough. Definitely don't go into it. I mean, I'm sure y'all have heard probably now, since we've all taken, or most of us have taken it as pass fail for the first time. Because like, hearing about that the first time, we were all like, oh, like this is amazing. Like, okay, like it won't be too hard to like pass, but like it actually is like really hard to even like pass. So yeah, I would still just look at it as like trying to study as if you're getting a score, because it's not easy. Honestly. I took a baseline NBME based on like recommendations by, I think like Stella, and just like, I think the school recommended you do it too. Didn't expect much, but I mean, it was pretty killer, and it was pretty like, I don't know, humbling to like see my NBME score at baseline, but I tried to like not let that like discourage me really. It was more so tried to use that as a motivation. And took into account that I took like a month off of school, like I hadn't been doing anything. So yeah, I did that. I would recommend like trying to do that at least. You could maybe, I don't know, try studying for a week and then doing it as a baseline. Because I don't know, it was kind of hard actually to like to just take it right off a break versus like getting into the groove a little bit and then taking it. But yeah, I would do that. So I like switched it up a lot. Like I started doing UWorld a lot because that's what everyone was saying, to do. But terms 1 through 5, I wasn't a big practice question person. Like I did more so like doing rereads of like lectures, or doing like 3 passes or whatever by the time you get to the exam and stuff. And I really liked focusing more on like content and like words and stuff. So And I was doing it random too. I wasn't going by system at first. And then I realized like I needed to go by system. So I like switched back to doing like you rolled by system instead of mixed up. But then I felt like it would take like it was taking me longer to like get through like a whole like all of cardio because I'm trying to learn all of cardio. And then I would like get like pushed back like in my schedule. I tried using cram fighters, which I did. I think that's what it's called, cram fighters, to set up a schedule because I'm also not a person that like can set up my own schedule. I don't know. So I tried to stick to that, but yeah, it really is like trial and run. I wish that I had figured it out like before I started studying for STEP, but being on the island was pretty distracting. I don't know, kind of in term 5, since we like all went back after being gone for COVID for a while. But yeah, I would just say like try and like figure out what works out for you study wise, because everyone is different. Like everyone was studying different. All of my friends were studying different. Maybe try and study with people if you can. Yeah, it just sucks like studying for this exam, honestly. But I wasn't doing very well in UWorld either. Like a 60% that would have been like really nice actually to have, like, at average. I didn't finish UWorld either. One thing I wish that I did do more of though was like more UWorld questions, because I felt like STEP was like most representative from UWorld versus the MBMEs. I don't know, because I wasn't doing very well in the MBMEs at all. And then I got to the free 120 and I did like a lot, like significantly better on that than the MBMEs. And I took that like a week before. And then like at that point, also people talk about like confidence in taking the exam. That was like a huge thing by like the last like week or two before I was like scheduled to take STEP. I took it the day before our date. So March 24th, I think. I like thought about delaying it for sure. A lot of people were delaying it at that point. But then like I talked to my dad and I don't know, like he just like encouraged me to just do it. And I think I had that much confidence, like enough confidence to go in there, even though like my MBME scores were like pretty borderline. I just decided like I didn't want to study anymore. I didn't feel like I would be effective like if I continued to study anymore. Like I was burning out for sure. And a lot of people say like if you're studying too long for this exam, you're just gonna like go in a cycle of like forgetting everything that you like really focused on at the beginning, because you're having to learn so much stuff. And there's I think Hi Guru. I don't know if you guys will probably like hear about him whenever you're studying for STEP, if you haven't already. But he had like a course that I bought that went over like test taking, like basics and stuff for STEP. And he like explained like this peak of like if you study, for like too long, like you're gonna hit like a plateau, and then you'll like actually start like dipping in knowledge. So like Brady was saying, yeah, like I would just try and get it done, like try and like keep that deadline in your mind of like what the school is trying to say. But obviously, yeah, if you're not like confident or you don't feel like you could do it, like it's totally fine to delay it. Like don't rush it, because it would suck if you took it and you really didn't feel ready and then you failed. Because I mean, like, you can still get a residency after, but they've been like saying a lot lately in our meetings now, just that like, I don't know, you don't want to fail. Yeah, so I don't know, I think all of you guys will be perfectly fine. So like where my confidence came from and what pushed me enough was being in IEA, like the first basic science years. I just went off of that like I knew, like, I was smart enough to like stay in IEA like terms 2 through 5, and like all of that knowledge that I did have, like I was just plus on top of like how much I had studied and stuff, I just like used that to like build my confidence and just be like have the mindset that like I'll be fine, like I'll be able to do this. Because I think like confidence at this point is like at that point of like when you're about to take it is like 50% of the exam, kind of like you have to go in there with a really like just with a confident mindset, because if you're going to go in there, it really messes with you. I don't know. I think like you need to go in with like a clear mind, confident, just convince yourself if you don't think so. I mean, like even as cheesy as like staring in the mirror and like telling yourself like you can do this, I think is really important. So Yeah.
Yeah, do the Superman pose in the mirror. That always works.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of good points. One, I preached this before. Doing UWorld questions, it's not just the act of knowing the material, but it's like playing sports. The more you practice, the more confident you get, the faster you get. Reading these questions and understanding them the first time through is very important, right? So like you don't have to go back too much, right? So the more questions you do, the better you're going to get. Savannah brings up a couple of good points. I very much recommend you take an NBME right after term 5. If you're going to take a month off, maybe like literally like the weekend y'all finish, just take an NBME. It's like what, 50 questions, right? You can just knock it out in the morning. And then at least you have your baseline, and then you could take your break or whatever. But if you start January, if you say you start the first week of January, 8 weeks, you could take it in the first week of March. And what Savannah was saying, that plateau generally happens at the 8-week mark. So that's why they recommend 8 weeks, right? If you need more, sure, that's fine. But understand, like there is a point of diminishing returns, right? There's a lot of material to cover. And generally speaking, nationally, that 8-week mark is kind of where they cap it. So even though you know you can push that date back, it should be a hard date in your mind. You shouldn't necessarily think, oh, it's okay, I could take this weekend off. I could always push it back. Like you don't want to have to do that. You don't want to do it, okay? Because then you get in the cycle of, oh, my confidence is down. I could just push it back. All right. If you have to, you have to, but you should go into it with that mindset. But yeah, definitely questions. This is the game you have to play, multiple choice questions. So get good at it. As you all are already being an IEA, right? So you should do fine. Pooja, Nick, y'all already took step 2. Do y'all remember anything about step 1? Do I have any advice that we didn't talk about?
So my only advice, I guess, that no one has really mentioned as much is try to use as much of term 5 as you can, really as a pre-dedicated period to learn all the material. And then like I was pleasantly surprised when I took my baseline NBME because I basically went through all the systems in term 5 and did all the RX questions associated with them. So once I got to my dedicated period, I basically was just doing random UWorld questions and trying to get through the Q bank. And I think really spending as much time during term 5 learning the material well is what helps me the most with STEP. So that would just be my only other piece of advice.
Yeah, I kind of echo the same thing that Pooja did. I used term 5, like as we were going through the BSc, if it was like the cardiorenal block, I use that to study cardiorenal and do like boards review, boards and beyond and stuff along with lectures. And then once I got to the dedicated, I didn't really have to go back as much. I would just touch on subjects as I was doing UWorld and reading the explanations just to figure out what I did wrong and then looking at first aid and kind of annotating it. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, first aid. I don't think anybody mentioned AMBOSS, but a lot of people like AMBOSS too. If you're using that for term 5, that would be good for STEP. And I find, like I said, I did UWorld for STEP. I'm doing UWorld for clinicals. It kind of all, is fairly the same. We can talk about clinicals, and we don't want to bombard you guys with too much. So maybe we can like briefly talk about kind of how it works. So well, a little bit. Okay, so after you take the exam, you need to make sure you get your health forms in. Because sometimes I know this is a long way away, but hear me out because this happened to a lot of people. You're gonna submit your test and you'll be like, oh, I get to do the health forms now, I'll get it done really quickly. Then you'll go in and your titers are too low. So you got to get a booster shot, and it's just a whole thing. So if you have time, try to get all that done so that you can submit it right when you get your scores. If that's done, there should be a fairly quick turnaround to find out where you're going. And then, then you'll have about what y'all say about 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. Some people is a nightmare had like less, but those are rare circumstances. Just like logistics from getting to Canada and getting all the paperwork. But generally speaking, you have 3-ish weeks to get everything together, which is not a lot of time when you're trying to find somewhere to live and all that, and a roommate or whatnot. So you'll go through that. Other than the health forms, I think that's really the only thing from the school's end. You'll submit that, and then you'll move or wherever you need to do, and then start clinicals. So, do we want to get into all that? Quinn, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a perfect way that we can segue into just clinical life and some IEA specifics on how that works.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Right. So the way it works for clinicals is that you do 8 hours For fourth year too, right, Pooja? 8 hours third year, 8 hours fourth year. Okay, so you'll just do 8 hours of community service. It's the same amount of hours, except there are no meetings. So just submit 8 hours. I think Quinn will make the deadline. It's like some April or whatever for us. And you'll just submit your 8 hours, and then as long as your grades stay good, you'll be fine for graduation. So it's really lax on that end. So the way the clinicals is going to work, and just so y'all know, Lindsay and I did a whole thing on the clinical thing. It's on Scrubs, so we really went into detail about studying for that. But we'll touch on it now. So you're going to do 12 weeks of internal medicine, so 3 whole months, and 12 weeks of surgery, 3 whole months. That's what Akash and I just finished. So literally the first half of our third year was just those 2 rotations. So then you do 6 weeks of psych, 6 weeks of family medicine, 6 weeks of peds, and 6 weeks of OB-GYN. And that makes up your cores. And then you get into electives, and we're still in the process of figuring all that. We are. So that's a whole nother thing. But it very much, and y'all could attest to this. I think it doesn't necessarily depend on what hospital you are at. It's almost with what the rotation is. Like, I know people, for instance, that are at a hospital, and they've had some good feedback for the IM department, some bad feedback for the surgery department. So if you hear from somebody and they had a bad, they did not like the facility, it may just because they had one bad rotation. Okay, so it just because there's different departments that are not as good as other departments, it doesn't mean the whole hospital. It's just touch and go, and a lot of it's just your personal preference. Some people like it more hands-on, some people don't. So just keep that in mind. But there's a lot of leniency for how the hospitals actually, actually you put in guidelines, but it's going to depend on the hospital rotations, how exactly that goes, like how they want the report submitted, and when you meet with the doctors, and how many didactics you have. There's a lot of leniency there. So if you talk to somebody that didn't like a specific place, maybe ask them, what rotation did you do there? Was it, did you hear about other rotations? So yeah, and again, study wise, like I said, I still use UWorld. I know Akash does the whole UWorld, and Anki, he's still doing that. What about y'all, Pooja and Nick? What do y'all do study wise? Same stuff for clinicals?
Yeah, so I mostly just use UWorld, and then I do a little bit of online med ed. I also did some AMBOSS in third year, particularly during the first half of my third year, but I didn't think it was feasible to do all the AMBOSS and all the UWorld questions for every rotation. So I'd usually do about like maybe half AMBOSS questions and then all the UWorld questions. There's also practice and BMEs for each of the exams. I've found that the most recent ones are probably the best, and the older ones aren't really that accurate in the score they give you. A lot of people tend to do a lot better on them, and then they think they're going to score really well on the shelf, and then they end up not scoring as well. So I'd recommend saving the newer ones, like whichever ones are most recent, for right before your shelf, so you have a more realistic idea of how you're doing. But besides that, I mostly just use UWorld and online med ed. Online med ed has like a good collection of videos, and then I do like kind of corresponding questions on UWorld. And then the other thing I do is before, like the week before my shelf, maybe I would watch either Emma Holiday. She has videos on YouTube for most of the cores. And then if she doesn't have a video, I would check out like Divine Intervention or Dirty Medicine to see if they have like some sort of comprehensive video for the shelf. They're usually like just a couple hours long, and it's a good review of like everything that you want to do.
Yeah, she has a lot of people use her reviews kind of right before. She'll do like a 2-hour review on internal medicine or surgery or whatever. And it's a good kind of umbrella review on everything that could be tested. How about you, Nick? What do you do for clinicals?
Yeah, so for clinicals, I try to keep it kind of as simple as I could. So I use online med ed, UWorld, and Anki. Those are my only 3 resources I really used. And Anki is really nice if you can put it on your phone. And if you have any downtime in the hospital, maybe between surgery cases or maybe during lunch or something, you can just pull out your phone and do Anki cards as you're sitting there. And that kind of just helped get some of the studying done. And then I liked online med ed a lot. It was kind of a good, resource like the basic level of everything, and then UWorld kind of helped enforce a lot of that, and using UWorld not as a testing tool, but as a learning tool instead.
For sure. And yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, well, you use UWorld as a learning tool. And for me, this was very much the case. Like, it wasn't so much the first time around if I got the question wrong, is that I understood the explanation, right? So because it is my review by using UWorld. So going through that is much more of a learning tool than a testing tool. So if that's your approach, but what's very important is that you set up a schedule and stick to it. So whenever you're going to get started, it's important that you stick to the schedule, because that's going to kind of dictate, whether you're covering everything efficiently. So a solid schedule is definitely recommended. Okay, anything else I want to add? We could kind of go through these questions. Good.
I just have one thing about when you pick your clinical site. A lot of places, you work directly with residents, and some places you work directly with attendings. Personally, I've done both now. When I was at O'Connor, it was almost exclusively with attendings with some residents sprinkled in here and there. But when you work directly with attendings, you really get to know them different, and they almost treat you like a resident, which can be good or bad depending on what you want to learn in that rotation. And they really get to know you better, and they get to write you really great letters of recommendation. On my interviews and stuff, I've had program directors comment on, oh wow, they really seem to have gotten to know you there. Whereas like now I'm on my medicine sub-I, where it's a place with a residency, and I see the attending for maybe 2 hours a day at most. And it's not really much one-on-one time with them. It's more like group rounding. So, really take that into account when you're trying to pick your place and reaching out to different people, asking, hey, what was it like there? Who did you work with, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, obviously letters of recommendation are going to be important too. So understand that these physicians see 1 million students. They all only see your eyeballs, so they don't really remember who you are. It's kind of difficult. Even if you work with them in the OR for 7 hours a day or whatever, there's a lot of students running through, and some of the physicians will be like, yes, I'll write it in a year, just submit your CV. So understand that they're not going to know you as well, and they're going to use your CV a lot, which is kind of, it's part of the process. But as Nick was saying, if you can meet some of the attendings and get to know them better, they could write you a more personal letter, which kind of goes a long way. So it's all about you. Like if you put your foot forward and you're interested and you want to talk and ask questions, the residents want to teach. Everybody's in medicine, but most people are in medicine because they enjoy it. They enjoy talking about it. So you just have to be, a little bit persistent, and you want to show that you care. Like if you just stand in the back of the room, they'll let you stand there. Like that's fine, But in regards to like learning and stuff, as long as you show that you're interested, like all the residents and the attendings will be more than happy to help.
I just got
Let's see.
So in regards to what rotations you do in third year, it's a little different based on what sites you're at. At Hackensack, we actually don't do family med in third year. You have to schedule it on your own during fourth year because it is still mandatory. And we do emergency medicine during third year. I know some other hospitals do that as well, like Wyckoff in New York also has emergency medicine during third year instead of family med. And then some sites just don't schedule family med for you, and you only have 42 weeks in third year. So keep that in mind. If family med is something you're interested in, you might not want to go to Hackensack. And versus if you really know you want to do EM, you might want to be at Hackensack or Wyckoff. Or I don't know if there's any other sites like that where you have the opportunity to do that rotation in third year as well. So that's something you want to look into if those are specialties you're interested in.
And when you do fill out that form, at least I did with, like you could put the city, or sorry, the state, but you can also put the hospital, whether you get it, you could just put it, and if it helps, it helps. So yeah, but there's no guarantees on the state, and there's definitely no guarantees on the hospital you go to. But yeah, so me and Akash have family medicine built into our course, but Savannah doesn't. So she has to take it. I guess technically it's an elective. So these are all like little logistics. It's just part of it, and you'll learn as you go in that regard. So, all right, so let's try to look at some of these questions. Oh, sorry. And also when you submit that form, if like, there's like a comment section, if you have a spouse, family in the area, like you obviously put that, right? You'll have precedence. If you're from New Jersey, they'll probably put you here. But if you're from another state, like, I would imagine you have less preference. But if you have a spouse in the area and whatnot, make sure you add that because that all matters. They take that into account. Okay, here I have the question list here. So we could talk about the site placement. Let's do that one first. How often will you need to move for rotation placement? Did anybody have to third year do multiple hospitals?
So I had to do all of my most of my course at up in San Jose. I had to do psych down in Los Angeles. That was the only one I had to move for. I do know people that were in New Jersey at like Trinitas for some, and they had to go to, I think, into New York for peds. So they just stayed in New Jersey and they took the train in every day, which is, a bit of a hassle. And they had early mornings and stuff to catch the train, but it is doable.
I think it's one of those things like if you can get at a hospital that has all the rotations there, the logistics are obviously easier because you could stay at one apartment. You don't have to sublet or sublease or get an Airbnb. Savannah, do you have to do psych? You don't have to do psych in Manhattan?
I have to do it. Yeah, I have to do it in Manhattan. So Brooklyn Hospital Center is actually nice because they have like all of our cores except for psych. So everyone that I'm with, like at Brooklyn Hospital Center, we all have all of our cores at Brooklyn Hospital. But I know like most people I know actually like in New York aren't at one hospital. Like a lot of people are started out like the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 rotations. Like Selma, like she started at Flushing, like she's been at Flushing in Queens for I think she's still there, but I know she switches to Kingsbrook or something like that. So in Brooklyn, so she's going from like Queens to like Brooklyn. I think she decided that she's gonna get a car, I think, and drive versus like moving there. Because her fiance is 4th year and he's in Queens right now. But yeah, like she's having to move, I think, in December or something to Kingsbrook, or I mean, she's finishing rotations in Kingsbrook. So a lot of people here in New York, for some reason, at least like with our start date, they got placed like all over the place. Like it was almost like all of my friends, most of them got placed at like 2 to 3 different hospitals. So that's annoying. I got like really lucky with getting Brooklyn Hospital Center. So.
And Akash and I have all our rotations at St. Joe's for psych or for even internal medicine. Like we'd have to go to like some outpatient facilities, which were like a mile away, but all of our rotations are there. This is a good question in the chat. I think I heard word of mouth about the different hospitals. And do you know, is there something, Pooja, you may know, is there something on the website that you to know if certain hospitals do all the rotations there?
Yeah, I think when they send you the form, they send you like a website or whatever, and it tells you what rotations are offered there. So if the site or hospital you're assigned to doesn't offer all the rotations, you're going to have to go somewhere else for the rest. Usually, for the most part, I think they end up placing people in areas that are nearby. Like, for example, from Brooklyn going to Manhattan, it's not that big of a deal. There's very, very few students I've heard of who've had to travel all over. But for the most part, it's people who start off cycle. So if you don't start with your class, if you like delay step, that's one reason you might have to move all over. Or if you like just want to. I remember I went to one of these talks my 1st or 2nd year, and there was a student saying how he didn't want to stay at the same site. So he like chose to switch like for every rotation. And I guess SGU let him do that. They like just kind of filled him in wherever, and he would have like 2 days to pack up and move. But for the most part, even if you do have to go to multiple hospitals, it'll be within the same area.
Yeah, so let's reiterate that it's the off cycle. If you do need to delay step, if you need to, that's fine, but understand that there, you may end up at, it may be a logistical issue in that regard with multiple hospitals. Okay, let's see what else. Was it easy to get placement in the hospital of choice, and how does core rotation placement work going forward? Again, you really are putting down the state. That's what you're putting. You could put it in parentheses I put New York #1. I wanted to go to Brooklyn, where Savannah is. I got New Jersey. It's some random. I never heard of St. Joe's before I went there. So again, when we say like hospital of choice, like you're totally putting preferences in the wind. So like just understand that when you go through that. Do you have to schedule periodically as one rotation comes to an end? No, you get everything. Once you submit your step score, you will get an email that has all of your rotations for the whole third year. Also a good point. Fourth year gives you a lot of leniency where you can go to different places, right? So you may want to go check out a place in Florida or whatever, do a month back home or whatever you want to do. So theoretically, you could do all your third year rotations at one hospital, get your course done, do well, and then have fourth year to kind of have some leniency going toward doing different stuff. I know, Nick, you decided to come over by us and do some of your stuff here.
Yeah, so I went in California for third year, and now I started fourth year in New York. Now I'm in Jersey at Overlook, and then I'm going to St. Joe's actually in January. And then I'll be back in New York and then back in New Jersey. So I'm kind of bouncing around a couple of different hospitals over here because that's just what I wanted to do where it was available. So I wanted, certain rotations that were only available at certain times at certain hospitals. So it depends on that, what you want to do and what you're willing to sacrifice for fourth year.
And how are you living? What is your living situation with all the moving around?
So for what was it? September, I did Airbnb. Now I'm using a website called Furnished Finder. A lot of travel nurses use it. It's really good. I think it's actually cheaper than Airbnb and generally nicer because they cater to more professional people. And it's been great. And that's what I've been, trying to use throughout.
Yes, so Furnished Finder, I was trying to put that in the chat. That's a good one. And that's the same one that did the travel nursing website. There's another one, right? Or is that the same one?
That's the same one.
Furnished Finders. Yeah, so good. There's not a lot of furnished places around here, at least when I was looking. So keep that in mind too. You might have to get some furniture. Oh, somebody else.
One other thing for anyone who's going to want to apply to residency in Texas. Make sure you reach out to the school. There are certain requirements that Texas has for applying to residency there. So just make sure to reach out to school. I'm not applying to residency there, but I just know that does play a factor for some people.
Yes, Texas does its own thing, even with like med school applications, everything's kind of separate. So that's a good point made. All right. When did you get your start dates? Again, when you submit your step one, you'll get your start date. It could be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to like a month or two. Yeah, so it really depends. How do you choose your electives? Yeah, so that's a far down the road, but like we're just going through that process, Akash, Savannah, and I, because we're at that 6 month, halfway through our third year. So we're going through that process now. But SGU has a website. It shows you all the electives / sub-Is you can do, whatever you're interested in. You find a hospital. You basically just email them and say you want to do it there. So again, there's a lot of leniency towards fourth year. So, being that, I don't know, a lot of you have hospital experience, but being that you're thrown into it, maybe it's best to kind of find if you can, a good place to do your course, kind of get used to the hospital. And in fourth year, you can kind of venture out a little bit more with that. How do you pre-select hospitals? Again, you can just put your recommendations or what you'd like, your preferences in the whatever the form's called that y'all submit, EPIF, that thing. Put that there, put your recommendations, whatever you think will help. So yeah, do that, and then kind of hope for the best. Pooja kind of mentioned EM. Yeah, so if you're looking specifically for EM, go on the website and you can kind of look into that. Do you have any say where you are placed? Again, it's kind of give and take there. Are there better areas to do clinicals that can help you better a chance with more competitive residencies? Maybe I'm biased, but I genuinely feel like the best programs, the best options are in the Northeast. Like the New York, New Jersey, St. Joe's is full of SGU grads. Our psych attending that we have now went to SGU just a few years before us. There's great options for rotations here. There's great options for residency programs. There's a great network here. So if you don't have any family ties and you're looking to do something, I mean, this would easily be my recommendation. How do you feel about this compared to California, Nick?
Like I was saying earlier, I don't think for residency it really matters too much unless like you're applying to Texas, then it might matter. But for me, I worked directly with attendings one-on-one, basically when I was doing my course, and I got to know them and I got to really learn from them a lot more than I think I do with residents. I still learn, I mean, no doubt, but I think just it's almost a different level of learning, and they expect you to do a little bit more when you're just directly with them. And I loved my attendings at O'Connor. They were all amazing.
So yeah, again, like lots of opportunities. I mean, you really just need to research it, but generally speaking, like the Northeast, a lot of SGU connections here, a lot of, specialties, surgical specialties, kind of some of those things, you're going to find options here. And there's such a good SGU network. So if you're in between, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I genuinely feel like this is the best place to be. All right. Thoughts on East Coast versus West Coast? Again, yeah, maybe I'm biased, but yeah, I think it's nice up here minus the weather. Sorry, a question. Can I get more clarity on how to stay in IEA throughout clinicals? You'll get the email when you start clinicals. You'll just basically you just need to do 8 hours of service for that, and then you stay in per year, third year and fourth year, 8 years each. Sorry, 8 hours for each.
Can I jump in real quick here, Brady?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. For anyone who has specific IEA clinical year questions, once we do our talk with our panelists, stick around. We'll have an amazing resource that Emily put together. You guys can get a lot of that information there. We'll also send it out in our email. And for term 5s, we have a WhatsApp chat QR code that you can join, and we can get the conversation going there too. So IEA clinical questions, we'll kind of sprinkle some in this conversation, but at the end, we'll do a breakdown with a nice resource from Emily. So thanks.
Cool, thank you. And again, like I said, I previously posted a video on Scrubs covering like the logistics of actually studying for clinicals and stuff. So we don't want to bombard you. You have a long time before even clinical starts. You need to get through step before then. So you can always reach out to any of us if you had specifics about the location or whatnot. But let's see. I'm going to read these step questions and see what we covered. When do you recommend taking it? Again, the deadline's March 25th, around there for you guys. So before then, obviously, give yourself a little bit of leeway just in case something happens. And you have to push it back. You could still push it back and still make it within the deadline. How to know if you're ready for step 1? Yeah, I mean, those NBME exams, the UWorld, you kind of just have to gauge yourself. But generally, the NBME, you're going to do UWorld pretty much every day, and then you take NBMEs on the weekend or whatever you plan to do every other weekend, and you should, that's kind of the best gauge you can get. Okay, we kind of covered all of this. What extracurriculars are you partaking in while clinicals? Well, I mean, the normal stuff, the same stuff you guys are doing. Me and Akash play fantasy football. He's not very good, but he's practicing. We play volleyball. We go out. There's plenty of time to do stuff. You have time to work out. And yeah, so like it's not crazy, but it's very important that you do find this time to do it, because you're going to be working long hours. Like through surgery, it was kind of crazy. Like you literally are there so much. So it is important to, keep your workout routine or whatnot. So yeah, but you still have time. Even though you're trying to emulate what the residents do, you're certainly not working resident hours. I think, what are we capped at? 50? I think we're technically capped at 50 hours. But I don't think you'll rarely approach that unless maybe you're in surgery. Okay, I think that covered all the step questions. Okay, so we could talk about clinical years. What's your schedule like? Do you have holidays off? So we could kind of talk about it. Akash, maybe since we did IM and surgery, you want to talk about IM, and then I could run through kind of what happened through surgery?
Yeah, so holidays wise, it depends on your hospital. I think so I know I have friends in New York as well, and they got certain days off that we didn't. So it just depends on those. It just depends on your hospital. When you get placed, you can shoot them an email and ask them if it's an issue for later on for planning stuff or whatnot. But you do get some of the major holidays off. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Just IU, how you felt it went,
Yeah,
what the
so
schedule was kind of like.
right. So again, I think that's also going to vary depending on the hospital that you're in and how much work it is, what electives you get to take part in. So in our hospital at St. Joe's, we get to do, so it's 12 weeks. We get 4 weeks of floor, which is essentially just looking at the people or the patients that are there in the hospital, they're admitted, and kind of follow them on a day-to-day basis. But then you get like a week of GI in there, you get a week of pulmonary in there. And so you get these certain electives that you get to take part in on a weekly basis. We have like a week where we have different clinics as well. Like we have like a day of a rheumatology clinic. We have a day of derm clinic. So it varies again based on the hospital itself. Some days are longer, some days are shorter. Also depends on your attendings, even like in our group, like when with Brady, like he had certain, we had certain attendings that are a little bit more relaxed. They let you go earlier, some are not that way. So it really just varies depending on where you are. And also depends on how much you're trying to get out of it. Kind of like Brady mentioned before, if you show more interest in it, you talk to the attendings more. We're behind the PGY ones here, so we don't get that time, kind of like how Nick mentioned, that we don't get that time with the attendings. But if you go out of your way, you try to talk to them, you can make the most out of even internal medicine. Like for example, if you're interested in it, you can go out of your way, speak with the residents, kind of move up and talk to the attendings, spend some time with them. They can get to know you, even in rounds. If it's just rounds that you're seeing them in, show yourself, take interest, ask questions, things like that. But yeah, just in terms of internal medicine, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Really, it just depends on your hospital.
And that shelf was hard. Why don't you tell how that went? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the shelf as well. So it was our first shelf, and it was internal medicine, which encompasses a lot. As a lot of you might be aware, it's a big part of even just step. Even in step one, there's a lot of stuff that's essentially just internal medicine. For step two as well, it's one of the biggest ones. So it was our first shelf, and it was for sure like scary in the sense that, I mean, I personally took the NBMEs and I felt like I was good to go. And I did all of the NBMEs that were offered on the website, but it was just a completely different ballgame when you did this shelf itself. So we were all, and I think generally, I think Brady would agree, we all kind of felt the same, that it was just not how we thought it would go, just because the NBMEs, I felt like were on a different level than the shelf itself. But again, use the same approach to studying that you did before and do what you did, what did work for you before, and I think you'll still be able to make it. Really, there isn't anything like specific that you can do, unfortunately. But keep doing UWorld, use it as a study tool, like they were saying before, and go through every word of UWorld in there, and I guarantee you, like, it'll be the best resource that you can use.
Yeah, like we were all a bit taken aback. I think I got a little bit complacent because the NBMEs were fairly straightforward, and then the exam, for whatever reason, the exams are scaled and stuff. Some are more difficult than others, but don't get lulled into complacency there, because yeah, that it was definitely a difficult exam. And in regards to surgery, so we did a 12-week rotation in surgery as well. You do a lot of general surgery cases like laparoscopic cholecystectomies, gastric sleeves, kind of general stuff. You also do electives. We at St. Joe's had electives to do like anesthesia, orthopedics, neurosurgery, ENT, all kinds of stuff. So you got 4 weeks of electives, and then the other 8 weeks, 6 of those 8 weeks were on general surgery. Then you also do a week on trauma and a week on SICU, which is the surgical ICU floor. So you're thrown into it, and it's very interesting. And as Akash was saying, if that's your thing, like there's a residency director at St. Joe's that would do a lot of cases. I would be ready for the email when it came out. And when his cases came out, I would try to jump on him because I wanted him to see my face. I wanted to be the one in the OR with him. Right. So there was only a few of us in my rotation that were interested in surgery. And we were the ones that kind of like, were like, we need him to see us. Right. So just take that into account. But yeah, and look, it's daunting when we had to be there at 4:30 in the morning to pre-round and all that. And it's very daunting. So one of the big things, and it was very difficult for me because when I study, I like to have a confined space, and I don't want anybody talking to me. I don't even want people passing in the background. Like I like give me a few hours by myself. But when you're working a 12-hour day, like you have to find intervals in that day to where you can study. At least this is my, I think a lot of people's general consensus is that by the time you get home, you want to go to sleep. Like the idea of you could say, oh, I'm gonna do UO questions, but are you doing them efficiently, right? Because you're so tired. I would get 7 hours of sleep, but just the act of waking up at 3:30 in the morning just threw me off completely. We did have time in between cases, in between seeing patients and cleaning wounds and all that to study. But you just have to, it's fragmented, but you need, which is okay if you're doing questions, right? You can kind of do 10 questions here, 10 questions there and stuff like that. But I promise you, by the time you get home, yeah, you're going to be tired. So ideally you get your work done, at the hospital. Also, you're going to have a lot of things to do, such as case report, not case report. Well, like you have to write SOAP notes and full H&Ps and stuff. So if there's a lot of busy work, I try to front load them. So if I had a 12-week rotation, I try to get a lot of those papers done in the first 4 weeks because the studying gets more intense toward the end. So if you have a lot of busy work, you don't want to have to put it off towards the end because there's a lot of extra stuff you have to do. The exam is technically only a third of your grade. So there is also the, what is it, like the clinical skills and then your competency or your attitude and all that, which you should do fine in. So it does actually come down to your shelf score. So again, you have to find time in the day to study. Okay, it's more difficult than you think when you're trying to do it in a hospital cafeteria. Okay, so Savannah, you want to talk about your rotations, what you've done?
Yeah, I'll start on that. Yeah, it's been really hard, honestly, adjusting to rotations. Not, I mean, surgery for sure. I mean, that's going to be even harder, and that would have been harder to have like at the beginning. But I mean, I started on OB, which is actually like a pretty tough rotation to start on also. So I don't know, it took me a while, honestly, to like get into a groove to figure out like how I wanted to like do my day. And like, cause yeah, like at the end of the day, like it's like coming home from work and having to like study. It's just like the last thing that you're going to want to do every single day. I mean, I still struggle with doing that. Luckily at Brooklyn Hospital, I mean, they have they call it a library. It's basically like a computer lab, but I think it's like fairly new, honestly, but it's pretty nice. I mean, they have like comfy chairs and they just have a bunch of computers, and a lot of like students will just hang out in there. Today, I mean, basically there's not much for us to do besides like wound checks or wound changes and stuff, or like just doing something to help out the intern or the resident. So today, pretty much, I didn't really do much. Like, I mean, we were just in the library all day pretty much and just studying. So yeah, definitely, it's like a lot nicer if you could get studying done throughout the day. I think it really just depends on where you're placed. Like all hospitals are pretty different. Brooklyn Hospital Center is pretty chill, like very chill, honestly. OB was probably like my most hands-on rotation so far. Like I got to deliver like 2 babies, luckily, because like, an attending wasn't in there and I was with an intern or a resident. So they let you do more, whenever an OB, at least, like if there's not an attending there and the resident's like willing to teach you. Also on that note, it also depends on the hospital. I feel like with how much residents and attendings would want to teach you. Brooklyn Hospital, I mean, we have so many students. I know St. Joe's, like y'all have a lot of students too. I think we probably have similar amount of SGU students there. So it is definitely overpopulated. Like I think it would be a lot better and we would get more hands-on experience and stuff and exposure if there weren't as many students. But like right now in surgery, I think we have like 25 students. A couple of them are AUC students, but the rest of them is us. So I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I think it just varies a lot because a lot of people have different experiences. But yeah, I had to get there at, I don't know, before 6 a.m. today. So I got there around like 5:45 a.m. And then you do like morning rounds in like the auditorium where they're just talking about a couple of patients. And then everyone like runs and goes to do their rounds and whichever team they're on. Yeah, but definitely back on like the study thing, it's going to be really tough. Like it's a huge adjustment, going from basic science years to clinical rotations. Like I feel like I mean, I call it work to everyone else because, you know, that's basically like we're like doing free labor pretty much, or not much if we're not really helping out. But yeah, I would just try and study. Yeah, try and set a schedule too. I like wish I started doing that before, but I'm gonna set a schedule for now for surgery. Because I just took IM also like 2 weeks ago, I guess, almost, or a week and a half ago. Yeah, definitely tough. That was a tough exam. And I was studying, like, we got the week off, luckily. So I was just studying the whole week leading up to the exam, like all day. And I hadn't studied like that, I felt like, since step studying. So it like felt like kind of weird, honestly. I was like, oh my God, this sucks. But definitely a tough exam. And then yeah, it's like 65% of step 2 or something like that. So it's a pretty important one. So I would just get started early and figure out, I guess, kind of like how you want to study. Also, you can do a lot of UWorld, but I think you should, I mean, it depends on like the type of learning you are, I guess, but I have to, like, I realized I need to start doing like content first, like watch a couple of OME videos and then do UWorld questions based on whatever I watched in that. Like, you know, you can go to the system and then like pick actually like the topics within that system that I watched the videos on. I just feel like I was learning better. Like I started to learn better that way, but that took me, like, I didn't figure that out until like IM, like the last few weeks of IM. So just try and figure out like what's going to work best for you, and like when you would rather study. Like if you would rather study in the morning and get up super early, then like, you know, do that. But you're definitely gonna, the last thing you're gonna want to do is study at the end of the day. So just, I don't know, mentally prepare, I guess, for like feeling like that. And I don't know if it gets much better. Does it, like, studying whenever you come home from work? I feel like it's just the same. Like, I don't know, I feel like I would feel the same every time. Like, I don't want to study, but then you just kind of have to. I guess it gets easier if you get in a routine, but it's hard to stay in a routine too, though, you know, right? Because like your schedule is like all over the place and things happen and your day is not exactly the same every day. So I don't know. It's definitely a juggle.
Yeah. And so again, it's not necessarily hospital to hospital, but it's rotation in the hospital per you know, compared to different rotations. Like Savannah has to be there before 6. We had to be there at 4:30. So it varies. She has a week off to study. We did it. You know what I mean? Like for pediatrics, we have a week off to study. That's not global. Like it just depends on kind of, you know, where it falls in the rotation. But again, it's not necessarily like this hospital's tough. It's that this surgery rotation of this hospital's tough, but the IM is fairly easy. So again, it does vary, and you're going to have some good rotations and you're going to have some tough ones. Pooja and Nick, I want to talk about kind of how third year went.
Yeah, so for me, I really try to set a schedule, and I always try to get the like online med ed videos out of the way early, and then I could do more questions towards the end of the rotation. But I'd set a goal depending on how many questions there are for that rotation on UWorld of doing maybe 10 to 30 a day, depending on what rotation it was, how long it was and stuff. And then by doing that, I just kind of broke it up a lot. And I didn't, you know, study all one day, and I didn't study for 4 days, and I studied all one day. So I just did a little bit every day. And I generally kind of would relax on Saturdays and do a little bit, maybe more on Sunday, or I planned taking Saturdays off into my study schedule.
So I kind of talked a little bit, I think, about how I studied. So I'll just talk really quickly about my rotations. So I started with surgery at Hackensack surgery. It's 12 weeks. We did 10 weeks of different surgical teams and subspecialties and 2 weeks anesthesia. The hours were typically like 6 to 6 was the maximum, 4 days a week. And then Wednesdays we had didactics. A lot of days you got off, you didn't have to stay till 6. It was basically whenever your cases were done for the day. We was also 12 weeks for us. We had 4 weeks of ICU, 2 weeks of medical floors, 2 weeks of inpatient geriatrics, and then 4 weeks of outpatient. So through that, you did cardio, geriatrics, pulmonary, infectious disease, I think nephrology. So it's a little bit of everything. And the hours when you're on ICU were like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. ish. Sometimes you got out early. On floors, you also started at 7, you finished by like 4. And then on outpatient days, it was kind of like 8 to 5, and you got a couple days off when you're on outpatient as well. Then I went to psych. So for psych, it was basically like 9 to 5 every day. It was basic like. And then for EM, we had 3 8-hour shifts a week. Then I went to peds. For peds, the hours were very variable. When you're on inpatient, you're there either 7 to 5 or 7 to 7 most days. But then, for example, we had a week of nursery where you were there like 9 to 12 every day, or like 9 to 1 or something. So that was pretty chill. It was a nice break week. And then lastly, I did OB, where our hours were 6:30 to 5, about 4 days a week. And then it was the same thing as surgery, where you had a week off to do didactics and just study and stuff. So I would say like time-wise, peds was probably one of the more intensive rotations, because on surgery and OB, even though you were there for a lot of hours, you got those Wednesdays off. And then you also had time in between cases to kind of work on studying and do a lot of your questions. So a lot of times, especially on OB, by the time I went home at the end of the day, I had done all my questions, and that was on top of like seeing consults and going to all my surgeries and everything like that.
Okay, let's see. Next question. For spouses, those with spouses, how do you maintain a life outside of rotation? I think that's with anything, you need to find time for everything, but though I could speak on that. What about Nick? You're in a relationship too, right? Not to get too personal here. Aren't y'all?
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
is she with you?
No, she wasn't, but a lot of traveling and visiting and stuff, and you just kind of have to schedule it in. You just have to make time for it and schedule it. And really, clinicals, it's long, so you really have to take that time to make up, take time for yourself, those mental health breaks and stuff. Because after going through basic sciences, you have a study technique down by that point that you're in clinicals. Just stick to it, and you'll do great.
Yeah, I think the main thing is you have to be efficient and you have to be flexible. Try to get like for if it's 3 months long, you're gonna be like, oh, I could wait till the last month to start studying. But you may end up working crazy hours that last month. You may be just the attending you're with once you're there all day and stuff. So you need to be able to kind of work through that process. Can you round with an attending of another specialty if you're assigned to rotations later? I mean, technically you're supposed to stay with your team, but I would try to reach out to the clinical director ahead of time and say you want to work with them. Has anybody had experience with that, working with specific?
I know a lot of people I rotated with wanted to go into surgical specialties. So if we were on other rotations where they finished early, some of the surgeons or anesthesiologists, whoever they were working with, previously would let them kind of just like stop by and like say hey, or like pop in for a case. I think it's important to remember when you're doing that you make sure you're doing everything for your current clerkship first. You can't like leave your clerkship to go around with other attendings. But if you have like a half day off and you want to like maybe shadow someone else, like that's usually okay. Just make sure you're not like violating SGU's hours or anything. But like I know people who have been allowed to go back into the OR or do extra shifts in the ED if that's something they're interested in. Especially at Hackensack, if you're interested in ED and you have the rotation really early on in your year, obviously you're not going to be as strong as someone who had it at the end of the year. So they like were very open about it during our first week. Our site advisor said that if you're interested in EM, you can come back during your later rotations. That way you can get a better like slow, you can get better evaluations. So it's something they're open to. You just have to make sure that you're still going to everything that you want to.
Yeah, and I actually did that I'm applying into anesthesia this year. And so I did that I had surgery and then I had another rotation, and it was OBGYN. So if my call schedule ended for that day and I wasn't on call anymore and they still had cases in the OR and I knew who the anesthesiologist was and I'd worked with them, I'd go and maybe do a case with them or something. But like Pooja was saying, you really need to make sure that what you're doing for that core rotation is done for the day. You don't have any more rounding responsibilities and you're not missing out on anything. It really has to be out of your free time, not out of your rotation time.
Another thing you could maybe do, like say you were interested in cardio, like you could try to go, they have like resident didactics and resident meetings like very early in the morning, like maybe from 6 to 7 before they start rounds. You could head to the hospital an hour early, kind of show your face, meet the attendings, kind of do that. But yeah, obviously you have to get your work done, but then the time's yours. So yeah, you can go see other doctors or whatever you think you need to do. How's the work-life balance? Can you take days off? So we kind of spoke on this, but look, you got into med school, you figured it out through the first 2 years, you'll figure it out now. It's just you're adding a workload in there. You're adding a day of work in there. So you need to try to figure out, you don't have that time to just sit there and study. You just need to be more very efficient with the way you go about it. Give me a second. Well, that's just,
Also, kind of while he's looking for another
yeah,
question,
please.
he does have guidelines and policies in place for requesting days off and what you have to do. So that'll all be in the student manual, and you'll get access to that when you start your clinical rotations.
And they do let us take time off. Like say you have to go a week early or something, or you need a few days off. You just make those up on the weekend. At least at St. Joe's, that's what they let us do. So they are lenient. You just need to be honest with them. And the sooner you talk to them about it, the better. Or, like we've had people just between us, like if we ask, like switch rotations, not rotations, but switch days. Like if somebody has the morning shift and somebody has the afternoon, you could switch around. So you can try to work that in. But I think as was stated before, it is important to take days off here and there. Half days even, because like if you feel you get burned out sitting like you're doing now, studying, you can imagine that a whole day of work and trying to get studying in. And it's not that like you're willing to sit there, that's fine. It's that you're genuinely tired. Like it's not processing as well as maybe before. So just appreciate that. So yeah. Okay, so how do you know what doctors to write letters of recommendations? So residency directors at the hospital are great to get letters from, obviously. I think that's the main one. And then any doctor that you really worked closely with, that got to know you is another good one. I think Pooja and Nick could probably speak on this a little bit more because we're still kind of figuring that process out.
Someone else that's usually good to get a letter of recommendation from is also your clerkship director. They have a lot, especially if you're doing well in the rotation, like they've worked with a lot of students. So if it's a specialty you're interested in and you're getting good evaluations, but all the attendings you're working with, like you only know them for a week, I think your clerkship director is a great person because like theoretically they should also be sitting down with you a couple times during the rotation. For example, at Hackensack, we have like student specific didactics that are run by our clerkship directors. So they know us at least decently well. And then they also see all the evaluations we get from faculty members. So that's a great person to go to, even if it's not a specialty you're interested in. If it's a rotation where you just did really well and you feel like you would get a good letter of recommendation, that's something else to consider as well. And then it really just depends. It's kind of a little bit of a luck of the draw because sometimes there's attendings who just don't write letters. They just don't have the time. They work with so many students and it's understandable, but if you get all those attendings, then you're going to have to find other people to write your letters of rec, such as your clerkship directors or like later on during your 4th year electives. But if you're interested, I think it's important to make it known early on in the rotation, because if you tell an attending the first day of your rotation, like, hey, I'm really interested in this specialty, if like, let me know if there's anything you think I can improve on or anything you think I'm doing well. And if you ask for feedback, they'll give you feedback and they'll see that you're like genuinely interested in improving your performance. And then that'll also reflect well in a letter of recommendation.
Yeah, and like they're going to want you to submit your CV too, so have that ready, just so they have a basis. Maybe put a little picture that you don't have a mask on, so they know what you look like for the first time. It is frustrating I know everybody agrees with that. You walk around and nobody really knows these people you're meeting. Anything else about letters of rec? My only advice would be to try to get some done early, because you don't want to get stuck 4th year trying to figure it out. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Pooja, you have to submit 2, but you could submit up to 4 on ERAS.
So it depends on the program and specialty you're applying into. Most specialties actually require 3 minimum. And 2 of those they want to be from the specialty you're applying into. So I technically have 3 internal medicine letters of recommendation. One's from 3rd year, one's from 4th year, and then one's a chair letter, which is something that's specific to internal medicine. And then I have 2 letters of recommendation that are outside of internal medicine. You can only submit a maximum of 4 letters to each program you're applying to. So I can't submit all 5 of those. So for most, I actually only submitted 3 because that's all they required, but it's good to have 4 in case you have programs that require 4. And then the chair letter is pretty generic at SGU. They're very open about that. So I would only submit that to programs that require it.
And so 2 from the specialty you're interested in, and 2 others. In surgery, they want 3 surgeons and then 1. So it really depends on what rotation. What's your experience, Nick, with the rec letters?
Yeah, so for letters of rec, doing anesthesia, for me, it was a little harder to get letters of recommendation because there was no dedicated time during my course for it. I mean, I had like a week of it, so it wasn't a lot of time to make a great impression. I had some kind of extenuating circumstances with my letter writers that happened. So I was lucky in that I was able to get a couple anesthesia through that though. And so it really depends. You really just want to get to know them, and they'll ask you, what are you interested in? What are you applying? If you say, oh, I'm applying internal medicine. Oh, I'm really considering surgery. A lot of them will go out of their way to, make it known if they have certain cases that they think would be good learning opportunities. They may reach out to you. And that I think it happens more in a smaller group at a hospital versus like if there's 25 people in a rotation. So it really just depends on where you go. But I would just say, let them know what you want to do, and just always do your best work. Even if you aren't applying into internal medicine letters are great. If you aren't applying into peds letters may be useful because you want to show that you're not just only working in surgery because you want to go into surgery. You want to show that you're putting your best foot forward in all of your rotations.
Going
Yeah.
on, you also want to have like maybe letters of recommendation into parallel specialties. If you're thinking about dual applying, I personally didn't dual apply, but a lot of people do, especially if you're applying into something competitive. So if you're thinking about that, or if your step scores aren't as high as you want them to be, you want to make sure you have enough letters of recommendation for each specialty, because nothing's worse than applying into like surgery and psych and then having your psych letter say, oh, like this applicant would be a great applicant for surgery, or vice versa. So make sure if you're planning on applying to 2 specialties, you don't have to get 2 full sets of letters, but at least like make sure you have enough specialty specific ones. And then your like additional letter that's like from neither of those specialties can be a bit more generic.
Yeah, so some people do apply to 2 different programs. Maybe that we could keep that for another day. But that is a thing to be aware of when you're getting your letters of recommendation and stuff. But it is a thing, you can do that. But yeah, so be aware of that. But yeah, again, try to get them early if you can. And as Pooja did, she has 5. So maybe, just get them. And then if you get better ones, you could kind of bump the other one, right? Like you only can submit whatever, right? 4, 3, 4, right? So theoretically, yeah. I guess y'all waived your rights to read it? No.
Yeah,
you did. Okay.
SGU makes you, for IM at least, they make you like basically upload it yourself, so you don't waive the rights to that one. But for all the rest of them, I waive my rights.
Isn't there like a checkbox or something like that says you read it? So theoretically, if you read it, you could discard it if it's not good. So it's something saying like, I have confidence in who I am. I have confidence that I worked with this doctor. I trust what he wrote. I don't need to read it, right? So there's something to that. Okay, I think that's good. There's just last section, just studying. Any academic prep that should be done before clinicals? Well, just so you know, the approach is it's gonna be reviewed into clinicals, but it's a different approach. Now your approach is, what do I do now? Like patient comes in with this presentation, what do you want to do? That was not, you were just trying to diagnose things in basic sciences. Now it's, how do you treat the patient? What do you want to do next? What's the best approach? Okay, so that's kind of, that's the mindset, but I don't think you really need to like prepare for that. There's a lot of learning that's done on the job. like learning. I promise, if you do 3 months of internal medicine, you will know about diabetes, you will know about COPD, like you will learn these things because they're so common. Yeah, so I don't think there's any prep. Akash, I know you're doing Anki, like this whole, like, you want to talk, I know a lot of people here, I'm not familiar with it, but can you talk about how you do the whole review thing too?
Yeah, so kind of just going back to what Brady was saying, for studying before clinicals, my personal advice, if you're done step, just take the time off. You're gonna start clinicals and you're gonna be studying, being in the hospital, etc. Like your life is just gonna be, hospital studying, hospital studying. Take the time off. So I, like Brady said, do Anki, and Anki is just kind of built-in software where you're supposed to do it every day. Otherwise, the cards pile up. That was all I did just to kind of keep up with my cards so they don't pile up. But I didn't actually dedicate, time to actually study or do any specific subjects. I know some people like to kind of brush up on it before they start. Like, for example, people starting up on internal medicine, you could start studying for it 2 weeks or a week before it if you wanted to, start doing some Anki or whatever resources that you've been using, just to kind of brush it up and just so you don't feel like you got thrown into the deep end right when you start. I didn't do that still, again, just because I just wanted to maximize the time that I had off, just because I was stressing, thinking that like, well, my life is going to be done after this, so I'm going to just enjoy every single day I have left. But again, it just depends on how you feel about the whole situation moving forward with clinicals. Um, yeah, really, yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, IM is 3 months. Like you're going to study for step 1 in 8 weeks. You can cover the IM material in 3 months, even though you're working as well. So I think you'll have plenty of time to learn there. And again, the doctors are going to be teaching you, and you're going to see like, this is why we do a CT. This is why, we need to get blood work and stuff like that. So you kind of walk into it with that mindset. You'll be fine. I don't think that's that you need to really worry about it. Just enjoy your time off after you take step 1. You deserve it for sure. Best way to approach studying with the hectic schedule. Again, you just have to be efficient and flexible. It's just one of those things. Some days you're going to have more time than others, and you just need to work through it. What resources did you use to study? We kind of talked about that. Did you have time for research? Oh, we didn't talk about that. Okay, great. The hospital, at least at St. Joe's, there's abundance of research opportunities. All the residents are doing research, so you can talk to one of them that you get close with, and you can jump on one of their cases. You can do case reports, which is pretty common. They're pretty quick turnaround to get published, is my understanding. You could do some sort of retrospective study as well. But generally speaking, what happens, and y'all could elaborate on this, Pooja and Nick, but like you'll see some crazy case that's like, this is just not a thing, like in this area or like in this population set or this age group, and it'd be something super rare, and it'd be something the residents are like, oh, we need to write a case report on it. If you were in there with them, just jump on and be like, look, I'll do the busy work, I'll do the manpower, I'll do the meta analysis or whatever you need to do. Just ask them if you can get on it. So that's one approach to do it. What Akash and I and a group of us decided to do is we approached one of the doctors, and we have like a small group of us, and we just want to do it on our own with kind of, and have you kind of as guidance. So we're taking it as a group of us, a group of third years, and we're going to write the whole paper, and then we're just going to have guidance. So there's a lot of leniency or flexibility to how you do it. There are certain positions, at least at St. Joe's, that are like director of research. He was actually our clinical director for surgery. So all it was go to him, and he can kind of point you in the right direction. But there's just an abundance of research being done at the hospitals. So yeah, you just kind of have to be, available and willing to kind of do the busy work for the residents if it comes to that. What y'all's experience? Are you looking into research, Savannah?
Yeah, so I actually, I just was talking to a resident one day in peds, and we were talking about psych. I want to go into psychiatry. We were just talking about psych or what he was doing, because I guess he was doing research at the time. So I just started talking to him about like asking him what he was doing in research, and it happened that he was trying to start research on either Alzheimer's dementia. He had one thing on that, and then he had another one that was on adolescent depression, pre and post pandemic. So basically, like, I talked to him about that, and then I didn't really think in the moment to ask him like if I could get involved. And then I saw him like a couple days later in the cafeteria, and I just went up to him and I asked him if like I would if I would possibly be able to help out with the research that he was doing or get involved with the research. And he was like really open to it. And yeah, like, so it hasn't started yet, but because he was like in the process of getting it approved or whatever, because we're doing like adolescents, or I guess we're starting from like 8 to like 18 or something like that, the age group. So he had to get like all this approval and stuff to like basically start this study. So yeah, like things like that, I think it should be relatively okay to be able to get research once you get here. Cause I know I did try and do the MS, what was it? The MSPE, I think, with SGU.
Yeah.
MSRI.
MSRI, yeah. But it never like went anywhere. Like, I don't know, it just like never turned into anything. So yeah, like don't worry. I feel like you can find research like 100% with residents. Yeah, because like all residents, I think they have to do research, or I don't know, like
For
all
the
of
most part, yeah.
something. Yeah. So
And the thing about jumping on with a resident is that they want that thing published just as fast as you do, right? So like it kind of that'll help in that regard. Pooja, what are you doing? What have you been working with?
I've just done case reports. It's basically what everyone's mentioned. If you have an interesting patient with your residents, ask them if you can write it up. And there's usually a lot of people involved on the team, at least if you're on a resident team. So even if the resident you're directly working with says, I'm too busy for that, you can always say that's totally okay. Would it be okay with you if I approach the senior resident? Because I would like love to write this up. And usually they're fine with that. And everyone, at least resident wise, all the residents on the team end up on the paper anyways. So it's good for them too. And every time I've asked about a patient anyways, like the residents haven't said no, but if the resident says they're too busy, you can always ask the attending or other residents on the team as well.
And if you're having difficulty, so what Akash and I and a group of us are doing, we're doing vitamin D deficiency in COVID cases, which is seeming to be a thing. So what we're doing is we're going to do a chart review, take 600 or 700 charts and kind of go through them and see if we could do a meta-analysis and kind of see, what the outcomes are. So again, it's just a bunch of students, but we have a preceptor, a physician that's kind of in charge. So there are different options. You kind of just have to feel it out, but don't be shy. Like if you see the case, you're part of the team, you just ask if you could be part of the research, but understand, like, especially for more difficult specialties, they expect it. So you need to get it done. Ideally, you have it published before you submit your residency applications. I believe if it still isn't published, you still put it on there, right, Pooja? It just, you say it's pending.
I think you can say it's submitted.
Okay.
I don't know if you can say it's submitted. I think you can say if it's accepted and not published. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if it's accepted, you can put it. If it's not accepted, you can still put it as an experience, but not a publication, I believe.
It's definitely an experience, yeah. Nick, what about you?
So since there wasn't really many residents at my core rotation, I didn't really have a lot of ability to do research. That was one of the trade-offs of O'Connor's. There's not a lot of research there.
Okay, yeah. So again, like a lot of it. So St. Joseph's is a residency-based program. Most of it, besides psych, all the programs I believe have a residency program. So yeah. So again, find the residents. That's a great opportunity.
I just want to add a quick thing in. Like, for example, like I'm doing interviews right now, and like when you go on interviews, everyone asks about research. And like even when you think about rotation sites, students ask about what research is available at that residency. Even now, when people are thinking about sites, like everyone asks about research, and it's really important for certain specialties, but not everybody needs it. Like if you're applying internal medicine, research is always good, but it's not mandatory. Peds is the same way. Psych, I think more or less you don't have to have research. If you're applying to something more competitive like surgery, you might need it, but like EM, path, like those are all things where you might not need as much research. So if you really, really, truly hate research, you don't have to do it just because everyone else is. There's other ways and other extracurriculars you can do, like volunteering or being on like executive boards or whatever, that's outside of research too, to make your application stand out. You don't have to force yourself to do research just because everyone talks about it.
Since you brought it up, why don't you tell us about how the interviews, how this process kind of has been going for you guys?
So it's been going pretty well. Basically, the way it works is in about June, early June, or I guess late June, you can start with your residency application and then you submit it at the end of September. And basically you want to have everything in by that September deadline. For us, it was September 28th, because that's when programs download their first set of applications. And I received my first interview invite like within the week, like less than a week, I think like 3 days after I submitted my application. So I think there are definitely programs that start sending their invites out super early. So it's always good to have your stuff in as soon as possible. With that said, there's programs that don't start sending out their invites till November. So it's a very big mix. And yeah, I think it's just really important to select, when you're selecting programs, to put a lot of time into what you're selecting. Because for example, certain programs have different recommendations on how many letters of rec they want, or certain step scores. So if you're worried about cutoffs, some programs will say they're cutoffs. So you're kind of wasting money if you apply to a program that won't take you. SGU also generates a list for you of like 50 or so programs that they recommend you apply to based on your stats and stuff. So I applied to basically all the programs they recommended for me. And then I just went through the 2022, 2021 match list that SGU has posted on their website. And I basically just applied to most of the hospitals where students had matched IM that were in places I would want to live. And then, yeah, you get your interviews. For me, they're all virtual. I'm not sure if they will be in the future, but it's definitely less stressful, in my opinion, to be virtual. A lot of students are able to take more interviews, which is nice. And the interviews are all pretty short. It's usually like anywhere between 15, 20 minutes. And you might have like a couple interviews, like anywhere between like 2 to 4-ish. But yeah, it's not too bad. Honestly, it hasn't been as stressful. I think once you have your CV in, the interview is just for them to get to know you and see if they like you and see if you're genuine about going to their program. I think it's really obvious if you have like strong ties to an area, or like you have like all your research in a specific section or a specialty. Like it's pretty obvious that you might want to stay in that area, or that you like want to subspecialize in something. So they kind of know all of that from your application. It's really just getting to know you.
Nick?
Yeah, I kind of echo what Pooja said. But for right now, what you guys need to focus on is step one. Pass step one, get into rotations, and you can reach out to people then after that. But really, you need to focus on doing the best you can on step one. I know it's pass fail for you guys, but still, you want to do the best that you possibly can to set yourself up for success for the future. And actually, speaking of that, I actually have to log off because I have a residency meet and greet with some residents. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions about anything, step one, rotations, applying, anything, go ahead and shoot me an email.
Thank you, Nick. Again, California stuff, he would be the one to go to about those rotations. Also, if you're interested in anesthesia, both Nick and Akash are looking into that. So you can reach out to them. I think for the most part, that's good. There were, but you just understand, like, this is great. Past step one, and then you do have to study, but this is what you're here for. Like, you are the advocate for the patient. Like, you get to have time with them. You get to learn what be in a situation where you're finally want to be in, right, in the hospital. So you just need to take advantage of it and like get the most out of it, as you know. But at the same time, the most important thing is that shelf score right now. Okay, so spend time there, get your experience, but at the end of the day, you got to make time to study. And I if there was one thing I could say about clinicals, it's adjusting to being able to study like in small increments efficiently throughout the day. And sometimes you'll have days where you plan, I got 5 hours here, and then all of a sudden the surgery case will be complicated and you lost the whole day. So again, try to front load your study, and so you don't have 400 questions, new world questions to do in the last 2 weeks. Okay. But yeah, so I think we kind of covered everything. We can open it up. You guys are free to go if you want, but we can open it up if you have any other questions.
Anything going once?
I got something, Quinn.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Brady, I asked you a bit earlier about the like how do you find the hospital? Because it's been recommended you do like actually turn on my camera, y'all can see me. Recommended you find a hospital that's got at least 4 of your 6 core rotations in there, something like that, I think is what they were saying. And I was asking earlier, like, is that not something that's already pre-planned based off like SGU's placement, or is that something you actually have to go out and find? And if so, like, was the answer word of mouth, or was the answer there's a list somewhere? I just don't remember what you said.
I think Pooja mentioned there is a way to find out on the website. I just, yeah, again, like you'll probably, I don't know if you'll get the hospital that you choose, but if the one you want to recommend that they put you in, yeah, I think you could find out information on that on the SGU website. Probably the clinical portal has like a list of everything. But again, there's no guarantees, you know, so like you can, even though you put Brooklyn because you want to go there, there's no guarantees. But yeah, I believe that somewhere on the apparently the school sent out a list too. Okay, so yeah, check into that. But yeah, the clinical portal has a bunch of, and the Office of Career Guidance, OCG, has a website too. So double check on it. If you can't find it, you can just message me and I'll look into it.
And then worst case, if you can't figure it out based on that, if you go to that clinical rotations page that Nick put in the chat earlier, you can search up pretty much every hospital and someone's asked a question about it. And what I did is I found other people who had asked questions about the hospital in previous years. And I just kind of messaged them on Facebook and I was like, hey, did you actually end up at this hospital? Can I ask you about your experience? And they all responded and were like super helpful.
Yeah, that's probably the best approach, is to be like, I'm interested in IM or surgery, like find somebody that was at that hospital, or you just ask us, like I could probably direct you to somewhere, to someone if you're coming up here to the Northeast or something, and they could tell you about, not necessarily about the hospital, but about the rotation. Because again, you could be at Brooklyn and have an awesome surgery rotation and not a great IM. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying like it does vary because there's so much variation between department to department. So yeah. Anything else? I hope y'all are warm. That's what I hope. I hope y'all are nice and warm.
I think I'm gonna put that link in the group for you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I think if that's it, what they were talking about, the clinical portal, like on Carnage.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so look at the link there. Actually, there's a bunch of good stuff on there you can look through.
Mhm.
Anything else? I guess we did a decent job.
You guys did a fantastic job.
Thanks, buddy.
So thankful to have you guys on board.
All right, I guess we're good then. We could close the session. We'll post this. Quinn's gonna post it and I'll post it on Scrubs too for you guys to look at later. And as always, you could reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to help.
Thank you guys so much to the panelists, IEA members. I'm gonna drop the link to our form. Don't forget, if you wanna stick around for a run through of Emily's guide to clinical year in IEA, we'll go through that, won't take too much of your time. Panelists, by all means, I know you guys know what this stuff is. You're living it every day, so we're not going to hold you hostage to that. But to anyone who wants to stick around for that, stay online. We're going to put up those slides and just run through it real quick with you. Otherwise, I mean, again, these panelists took a lot of time out of their day to talk to us, so we appreciate the world for you guys doing that. So thank you so much. Let's show them some love in the chat, guys. If you're still awake, let's give them some thumbs up, peace signs. You know how we do it here.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you guys. Yeah, good luck.
All right, talk to you guys later.
Bye.
All right. Give me one moment to put this all together. All right, so this is an amazing PowerPoint we're going to send out in our email as well, but I'm going to give the floor to Emily, our incoming VP. She's going to go ahead and walk you guys through some need to know information about IEA specifics and clinical years. So Emily, floor is yours.
Yay, thank you. All right. Hey guys, we'll keep this pretty short and sweet. Everything is pretty straightforward as far as the IEA requirements into the clinical years. If you want to go to the next slide, Quinn.
Yep.
So first of all is the point of contact. So the person that's going to be following you into your clinical years is the president during the time that you're in term 5. So if you're currently in term 5, Quinn is going to be following you guys. For us term 4s, Kevin is going to be the one following us. And then term 2 is obviously to be determined. If you need to reach out to anyone or if you have any questions about requirements or anything else for IEA, there's 2 different emails. So we have the SGU email that goes to like the Outlook, and then we also have that existing Gmail account. And then any other like information that you might be able to find, you can find on the website as well. Any questions on like point of contact stuff? Okay, next slide. So as far as the grades, so unlike the basic science years where you by term have to like confirm your grade, your WMPG is not checked until really the end, closer to graduation. And that is going to be your term 5 president who's going to check that closer to graduation. Again, 90 is that magic number. So even the 89.9 is not going to count. It has to be greater than or equal to that 90. So if you've met that 90% along with the honors points requirement, you will graduate with the IEA cords. And then if you do not make that minimum of 90.0, you will not get the IEA cords. I think we can go to the next slide. So that being said, for term 5, if term 5 is the one that puts you on academic probation, if you dip below the 90% after term 5 grades come out, what you're going to have to do is email Dr. Clunes with a transcript at the end of that following term that you get off academic probation, that you do make the 90. To confirm that 90%. So in the basic science years, you can just, bring the dean's letter. But in this case, Dr. Clunes is going to be your point of contact for saying, hey, I got back above 90, here you go. And then we can regain the active IEA membership status. And next one. Yeah, so then now onto the honors points. So basically, just like our honors points here, a little different. So this one, you have a minimum of 8 per year. So if you kind of break that down, if you want to break it down 4 per term, but it's going to be 8 per year. And there's not really any restrictions on the type of community service performed. And then the next slide that we'll get to has some examples of things, but really there's no restrictions. And then go back for just a second. Yeah, so the Google form will go to, and for each year to submit those 8 points, the deadline is going to be March 31st of each year, period. The Google form you'll use, when we can go back to the next one, is going to be on our IEA website. So basically you go to the honors points, submit for clinicals, and then you'll pick whatever term you were a term 5 in. And then it'll just look like a Google form, just like you're submitting your honors points that you have been now. We can go to the next one. Here's some examples of some community service ideas, but really it can be kind of anything. It literally says in the Constitution, no restrictions on the type of community service performed. So next one. So if you aren't able to get the 8 honors points in a year, it's kind of like basic science where you'll be on the honors point probation, and to get off, you'll need to do double the next year. So if you aren't able to get those 8 in the 3rd year, you'll have to do 16 in the 4th year. However, when you get to the 4th year, there's no wiggle room anymore. There's no probation period. So if you're in your 4th year and you don't meet those honor points requirements, you're not going to get your IEA cords. So make sure that at the end of that 4th year, you're wrapping everything up and getting it in by March 31st. That's the deadline for those Google forms. So when's the deadline? March 31st. Don't forget that date. Etch it in your mind. So just a quick summary, your WMPG is not a term by term thing. It's at the end. If you have a 90%, you're good. It'll be checked by your president. If not, then you won't be able to get the IEA cords. And then just make sure you're submitting those honors points by March 31st. Next one. Yeah. And then Quan, if you want to explain that group chat.
Yeah, of course. So for any of our term fives that are with us, or even those who are watching this recording, as you know, we kind of started to implement WhatsApp as one of the main points of contact, at least here in basic sciences, but now we're going to continue that into clinical year. So by all means, scan this WhatsApp. I'm also going to include it again in our email. I'm going to try and make sure everyone's aware of this WhatsApp. And if we come up with any other communication modalities, we'll be sure to get that out to you guys. But this is just so we can all stay in communication. I know, just speaking from current experience, we get a lot of clinical year questions coming to the basic science cohort. So we want to try and minimize that. If you have clinical year questions about IEA, bring them up to me. You can bring them up to even Brady or Pooja or anyone that you come across, or even Sean, anyone that you come across who has knowledge on the topic. But you really want to address it to your cohort leader. So in this case would be me, or Kevin if you're in term 4, and then so on and so forth. So yeah, let's stay connected, guys. Term 5s, we're at the finish line. Let's finish strong. And I couldn't have asked for a better way to transition out. We have a great group coming in. And I think that is all she wrote, Emily. Oh, we got a little nice little ending slide. There you go.
Any questions, guys? Cool.
All right. Well, once,
Feel
twice
free to
sold.
message. Yeah.
And where's the recording?